March the 19th, 2020. Niles is going to kind of go over for us just logistics of the call and how it will be managed.
Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is mute everyone that's on it except for our microphone. So yes. Okay. So
I hear somebody coughing.
wait, hang on.
Somebody's not mute.
I'm going to try that one more time. Yes. Okay. So we're going to do it like this. So it'll be mute, and then at those times when there's input, when people need to speak, we will make that clear, and then and then you can through the chat feature, or you can. There's also an option to raise your hand. Let us know that you would like to speak, and then we'll go through that order and sort of unmute people as needed. That way, we don't have everyone at once, talking during those sections. Okay, so we'll continue from there.
Okay, great. So thanks everybody for joining us. Obviously unprecedented time. I'm glad Niles is here to help with the technology. And the first thing we want to do is welcome him, and we're excited that he's here. The council did interview a significant number of people. We had about 20 really strong applicants, and Niles' experience in local government as well as with relevant association work. And obviously his interview was great. We're excited to have him here. He's acclimating week one, kind of a strange week one, but he's here. So Niles, do you want to give everybody just a little background on you?
Certainly. First of all, I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited to get started and to get into all of this. I was at the city of Rockville just before this in the clerk's office, so dealing with a lot of the same issues that I am here, but on a slightly different size level in terms of population. I also have a master's degree in public administration with a specialization in public and nonprofit management. So this type of work is very much something not only that I have done professionally, but believe in and has sort of made what I won my career out of, so both educationally and professionally. And I also worked at ICMA, which is the International City County Management Association, which is for village and town and city managers. So my background in this for this position comes in a lot of different ways, but also sort of is coming together quite nicely here. So I just want to thank Julia, who has been in the office, although all of that is a little bit different right now with how with this pandemic. But she's been really great, and everyone from Tiffany, Arthur, and the rest of the council, acclimating me to my new position. So I want to thank everybody for that as well.
Great, welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a quick reminder, I forgot to say before, we are recording the meeting. The plan is for the audio to be posted on the website as normal. So when it is time for you to speak, please give us your name and your street address. Okay, so the first thing Miles has done, welcome. This is an opportunity for council to hear resident comments. So Niles is going to try and follow who's raising a hand to comment.
So if anybody wants to comment, you can either do it in the chat feature, and I'll try to unmute you, or I'll also give an opportunity for those on the phone if you'd like to speak. But first, anyone on the video chat / online. Just Lander here, happy to comment. Okay, give me 1 second, and I'll unmute you, and we'll go from there. All right, go ahead.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. This is Jeff Lander, and I know I've had an opportunity to say hi to a lot of folks who are either on the line or perhaps didn't have a chance to call. I know it's a real busy time. I just want to take the opportunity. First, I just want to thank everyone for just a quick moment to talk, and also just to give a few comments. I've had basically over the last week an opportunity to chat with a bunch of friends and neighbors, and really it was started based upon, quite frankly, just feeling as a friend and neighbor, wanting to reach out and get a sense of, is there anything that we could do as a community to support each other? And in ways that would be unintrusive, but also be helpful, especially for those who might be considered or consider themselves vulnerable, or quite frankly, as we go forward in this, perhaps even a bit overwhelmed. If all of a sudden you go from none to, 3 or 4 folks or children being homeschooled, that sort of thing. So just real quickly, a couple thoughts. There's still a work in progress here, but have had a really wonderful dialogue with members of the Community Engagement Committee, also folks who've been part of the listserv, and these are just a couple readout things. So first, I think there's an acknowledgement that we have to perhaps reach out, and I'm in a process of doing that. There are some captains that were sort of part of this community engagement team, and there had been questions clarifying what might be their role. I think we all recognize that that role is not or was developed before all this. So I think we're just reaching out, getting an understanding of who wants to be involved as part of a buddy system, because some people might, frankly, when they had signed up for that, this was not, even on their horizon. And so what we'd like to do is relatively quickly, have kind of a list. It might be by street, or maybe, a couple might be combined, but again, sort of an opt-in. If anyone feels they'd like a buddy check, that there are folks available within their street or nearby that could, facilitate. Now, one thing that I just want to mention about that is, this isn't the idea that you can reach out to someone and they would do groceries for you or take you to the doctor, because this is a very different environment than what it was a month ago. So this is more about working together as friends and neighbors. Maybe there are some virtual resources, or putting folks in touch with the right groups that could facilitate something if it really is an event that requires that level of resource. Otherwise, it could be simply folks want a check. What if there are folks who are kind of living alone or whatever it might be? So that's one. And I promise I won't make this too long. I just want to give a quick readout. The other piece, which I think we all recognize, is there a role around providing some sort of form of communication or update of meaningful or trusted information? We know that on the listserv, we've seen information that can be very valuable, but I think we also recognize in the time we're living in, there is just a glut of information. And if you even try and put something together, by the time you get it out there, it's outdated. So I think that's something that's a work in progress, but on an optimistic note, we know that we have a lot of folks in the community. There may be high schoolers, there could be others home from college. We could easily pull together probably a small group who could help comb through and put together things that could be as simple as, oh, here are some tutoring resources, or perhaps fun recipes. Or I saw the other day someone shared with me, my wife and daughter and family, we were supposed to go to Disney World, and my daughter is 7 and in 2nd grade. Someone shared a link where you can go on all the rides virtually, things like that. So I'll pause there on one more note that I was going to plan on kind of circling back a couple action items, follow up with existing captains, and also for folks who said that they want to be involved, and come up and have a short list and redistribute that back on the listserv. And then maybe pose a quick question, is there any type of information that folks feel would be valuable to them and meaningful? And if we get some sort of response, great. And if not, because we live in a world of a lot of information glut, that's okay too. Because let's face it, we live in a community that is well-resourced, relatively small, and we don't want to overload this, but I think we want to provide a sense of comfort for those who want it. And I'll pause there and turn it over. And again, I want to thank everyone for your time and listening.
Thanks, Jeff.
Respond at all? Any other comments?
Do we have any other comments? All right. Sorry, yeah? No.
There's no one speaking, Lori.
Hang on one second. Okay, sorry. I was going to say, is there any other comments?
If I may just suggest not necessarily muting all the council members as well, I feel like it doesn't really give us an opportunity to speak.
We can try that, certainly. Let's do that. Hang on one second. Okay, so.
And I believe Lauren wanted to say something as well.
Right, I'll oh, why is it? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that all of a sudden I couldn't hear anyone speaking.
Right, I was trying to
I could
unmute
see
us.
talking, didn't hear anything.
Right.
Lori, nobody added anything at that time.
So Todd is trying to say
Some people
something, and we
moved
can't
their
hear
lips,
him.
but I couldn't see any.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear any words. Okay.
So unmute me, Niles.
Yep. There we go.
Okay, there we go. Muted by the village manager.
Censorship.
So I had a couple thoughts, and yeah, I think first of all, I think that's I really appreciate everything you're doing on this. It's a tough time and a tough topic, and I really think that you've really taken on something which is quite meaningful for everybody. I love your idea about setting up some kind of buddy list so that there are ways for us to keep track of people. And there are those who will need that. Who may be by themselves or may not be resourced well enough to be able to reach out. So I really love that idea. I'm all in favor of that. My only qualm about us becoming a resource for things is that I worry. I just worry about certainly I trust that you guys, everybody, whoever you pull together will look at stuff and want to be well intentioned. But I worry about, well, geez, are we are you going to not read something? Are you going to miss something? Are we going to be conveying not full information to people? And so that I think, well, I don't know how anybody can truly do that. And I worry about, are we misleading if we're not one of those, government sources or sites? Not that the government sites are perfect, but I just worry about the position we as a small village are putting ourselves in by trying to communicate that. I think that's a little bit different than Keith giving his weather forecast, because we always know that he's the only one that's right among all the meteorologists. But I just look at that as a little bit different than this. And that's just my apprehension about us trying to get into that role. It just feels a little bit out of our ability.
Well, I think the point here wasn't so much about giving information on the situation as much as links to resources that could be useful to folks, living in isolation that they're not used to, right?
So one of the things that
Hey, check this out. Maybe you'll find it helpful.
one of the things
Well, if it's just links to resources, here's different resources. I think that can be valuable. That can be something that you put up. We can put up on websites. Say, here's resources for you to dig into on that. That could be very different.
And then, but we also had historically in this village, right? People have close relationships. A lot of people have close relationships with their neighbors, and it's been completely natural to reach out to the ones that you are closer to and you chat with and offer that help. So we should encourage people to continue to do that, especially if this becomes a more long-term situation, whether that's a parent with a ton of kids at home that they're now educating, or somebody who is a bit of age who may need some help running errands, right? It is a small community.
All right. Hang on one second.
You're not muted, Laura. Well, maybe you are.
Yeah, hang on one second. Because I want to see, because Marty had her hand up, so I just want to see if he's there. All right, Marty, you can go ahead.
Hi. Okay, thank you, Niles, and hi, everybody. I got a couple of just, resident comments, and we'll get into the election committee report, and I'm glad, I think almost all the election committee is on, so thank you to my wonderful election committee for being here tonight. What I wanted to say is just,
I'm sorry, were we done responding to, I just want to make sure we close the loop on.
yeah, I think what Jeff is doing is terrific. I told him that earlier, and I couldn't.
But I think Lauren had a comment on Jeff's thing. Is that
Okay.
right, Lauren?
Then,
Lauren, go ahead.
Okay, go to Lauren, come back to me.
sounds good. 1 second. Okay, go ahead.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just going to say that I think having something coming out from the village as Katya was saying, encouraging people to remember their neighbors and reach out would be a very important gesture. And I think that one thing that has occurred to me recently is that quite a lot of our older residents are not as comfortable with technology as younger residents, and that I think that in this time period, it is going to be very important that people feel comfortable being able to see other people on technology if they have the capabilities. I think particularly, I was speaking to somebody at the dog park today who is near, an older woman who is a widow and who had tons of people visiting her, and now it's going to become a situation where she's not going to be able to have as many visitors. And I just think we should emphasize something, how people are still, in a mode where they feel like they can come and help other people, to consider helping some of our older residents get hooked up with the technology that might be in their house already that they just don't feel comfortable with. Because I think there's going to be a lot of solace around that in the weeks and months to come.
Arthur's nodding, so can you turn to?
No, I'm just nodding. I agree.
Okay.
And I actually think that might be a role for some of our high school students, particularly right now, who are extremely tech savvy and might feel comfortable going and helping set somebody up. I mean, I know we all want to be very safe and careful with any kind of exchange right now, so obviously there have to be some very serious precautions taken, but that might be the biggest gift that we can give some of our elderly neighbors right now.
I would caution against that. We have exposure in the village, right? So just let's try not to spread it.
Well, then a phone call to talk somebody through,
Right.
what,
Yeah.
I think that whatever it is, I think there might be some older folks who would love to have a teenager help them figure out how to use this newfangled computer that they have. And, things like Zoom are actually incredibly easy.
Right.
I think they're going to be a very important tool for all of us. So it's just something that I think we should all consider right now is let's help each other get ready for this next phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about food security every day. Obviously, but this is something that I hadn't occurred to me as a basic infrastructural piece that we're going to need for dissuading or fighting against sort of loneliness and depression.
Somebody asked, what did I mean by saying we have exposure? I'm just saying that there's people out there that have come into contact with others who have the thing, right? That's just the reality of the situation. I think it's all over the city. So to think that we don't have that and that it's safe to just go to a neighbor's house
Right.
is, it's not necessarily the case. We just don't know.
Correct.
On that point, for my other council members, I think I've talked to most of you individually, just maybe putting up on our website for information sharing, here or .gov resources. So if you have questions about what's going on, here are a couple of places that we might recommend that you go. And then as far as, neighbor to neighbor communication, I think some of that's gonna be organic, Jeff via the listserv, but also, we'll make sure that when we put things out, maybe just gentle reminders like, have you checked in on a neighbor today from a healthy distance, whatever that, whatever that is at the time. So, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Now to Marty.
Okay, now we'll go back to Marty here.
Hello, everyone. I love Jeff's idea, and I love what Lauren just said. I think that there are so many ways that we can be supportive. Even just a phone call can lift somebody's day. And I have to thank my committee for kicking my butt into the 20th century and getting me on Zoom. This is my first time using Zoom from my home office. So you talk about transferring technology to neighbors. Thank you all for doing that with me. I had two other comments. One is about Jeff's idea, and then it's about the newsletter, because I think that it would be useful. You know, the election committee usually has a little section in the newsletter, the village newsletter, and often in the weekly wrap-ups. But I think it would be a nice service to have the care and kindness team, you know, to put some of that information from Jeff's team also in the newsletter, to have the sort of, you know, again, not just resources, but, you know, whatever. I mean, Jeff, that would be up to you. But I do want the council to consider using the newsletter and the weekly wrap-up to help build this sort of sense of neighborhood kindness and just, you know, being attentive to each other from a safe distance. There's so much you could do with just a phone call. So I really would like to see the newsletter start to pick up this notion of community building, because that's a positive in this very negative situation. Now, back to the comments I had. I actually have a thank you for the council, because, as you all know, I was so worried in December about taking a bad fall in that huge pond of water beside the village office there, you know, along the south side, where the steps puddled into water at the bottom, and frustrated that it wasn't being dealt with. And I know that you did get a hold of the landlord and get him to get out there, and I don't know if he snaked the drain or whatever, but it's been a lot better lately. So this is a thank you. I was worried about falling on that sidewalk, and instead I fell on my own. But I really thank you for fixing that one. The other question I have is for the whole council, really. And it's about what is the village doing to keep our office safe for our staff? I mean, poor Niles, you jumped in, like throwing you in the deep end of the pool. There's so much going on, and it's a difficult situation. And not only do you have a learning curve, but whoa, what a tough time to just be in the office. And is there any plan that Niles or Julia would be able to work from home if they felt safer doing that, or any special plan to sanitize the office? Our cleaning crew, you know, getting their, like, you know, work amped up to clean with more disinfectant? What are we doing to take care of the office and our staff?
Okay. Right.
There are other issues like fire.
Okay, so Marty, thanks for the question. Niles and I actually talked about this a little bit earlier today. You know, right now we've got, I believe, the largest cache of hand sanitizer I've seen anywhere. But also just keeping distance. We've talked about the ability to access things from home. Fortunately or unfortunately, some of our service providers and the information, we need somebody here on the ground. So we're in dialogue about that, making sure that he's comfortable with what's going on. We've discussed, the council hasn't made a decision, you know, really closing the office in a way, but in a way that tells residents, like, look, Niles is here, he's working, but if you need something, please send an email or call the office. Don't just stroll in, so that we're making sure people are being as safe as possible. The cleaning crew is something actually that we talked about earlier as well. So I don't know if you want to.
Right. So I didn't get a chance to talk to the cleaning crew yet. I don't know what their plans are. They are planning on coming tomorrow. So what I'm going to do is have a discussion with them tomorrow about their own safety and things like that, and what their plan is. I think if they have a good sense of, you know, what they can do, we can at least get a little bit of a you know, disinfectant and things like that, and clean up the physical space, and then we'll go from there. Because I still want to have that conversation, because we obviously don't want to put them at risk, but also, you know, that might be something that we sort of step back on or make less regular during this time to limit their exposure and our exposure as well. So I haven't had a full conversation yet.
And Marty, there's something else that, in addition to the coronavirus, we have a problem in the office of fire or other sorts of dangers. Fire coming up the staircase is something that we have to be able to think about and deal with. And I think we need a more thorough sweep of our safety in the office for both the staff and for residents at a meeting. I can't think of anything more horrible right now than a fire during a crowded meeting and how we would deal with that. So there are broader issues here in the safety horizon.
Marty, did you have anything else, or are we ready to check in?
Hang on, let's.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm so used to.
I'm muted.
No, you're unmuted now. So.
Okay. First, thank you. I appreciate the fact that you're giving this the kind of attention that I think it needs. And Arthur, I've often thought about that fire risk too. I think you all need to have one of the windows have one of those chain ladders so that people can get out a window.
We
Yes.
actually have 2 chain ladders.
We have 2 portable ladders.
But we've never practiced them. We've never drilled.
Well, you got to practice them before you need them.
You gotta
Anyway,
do it.
I'm really glad that you're thinking about that
Who's
because
going
I've been
down
thinking.
first?
No, I'm.
Is somebody else flagging up?
Oh, let me see. I don't think we had anybody else right there. No, if anybody else, here, I'm gonna unmute the people who are on the phone if they wanna say something, and then go from there, okay? So I did 301-654-0123. If you have anything, or if not, just say no. I'll mute that then. Oh, it went all full screen on me. Okay, and then the other person on the phone, 301-706, let's see, 2626. If you have anything to say, feel free.
No, thank you.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I want to do, sorry, give me 1 second. I just want to get things. Okay, it's doing it that way. Well, we're good.
Okay.
Okay.
So now the next item in the agenda is the opportunity for the committees, their committee updates. So Marty, since I think you have the most significant update, we might leave you to last. I'll start with the tree supervisor. Our village tree supervisor, Paula Goldberg, sent in a note. Not much to report on trees, except that the Arbor Day Foundation has requested that Tree City applicants and recipients postpone any planned Arbor Day events at this time due to the evolving COVID-19 pandemic. They recommend scheduling an event later in the calendar year at this time, so of course we will comply with that. Walkability, is there anything you wanna,
Everything's on hold.
Arthur's saying on hold for walkability, maybe we'll get you guys some technology. And then CEC, I don't know, Christy, did I hear you on there?
Let's see, what's that?
Okay, the only thing I'd say, I know the CEC committee is gonna plan to go forward with their, March the 25th meeting. They'll do it, via teleconference or Zoom. Niles is working with Christy on that, and, we'll get the information up on the website. I should say our calendar is gonna have, agendas in the calendar invites. They will also have dial-in information in the calendar invites. So if somebody misses an email, but they know they wanna find something, they can go to the website and reach it there. That's also how we're meeting our Open Meetings Act, public notice and public accessibility requirements. So CEC walkability now, elections.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a very fluid situation, and my committee has been working incredibly hard and incredibly well. I couldn't praise them more. We had a committee meeting last night using Zoom and conference call that was very serious, very substantive. And we have a recommendation, and then I'll break this down into how it comes out into various, pieces here. But the recommendation of the committee was very strongly to postpone the election preferably to maybe late June, early July, and to go electronic. And those are two different pieces. So let me walk through this. I would like to start by welcoming Niles again and thanking both Niles and Julia for their assistance to the election committee, because our election cycle starts in February and runs right through May, and this year may even be longer. And we very much rely on their capable professional staff support, so we really appreciate you. But here we are, we're all facing this really dangerous, rapidly developing situation. It's changing day to day with the virus, and we're very, very concerned about the community's health and, of course, our own as the election officers. So we met last night, and again, our recommendation was quite strong, completely unanimous, postpone preferably to early July, and go electronic. So we are canceling the in-person voting at the polling table this year, and I think the council has already agreed with us on that, yes? Are you all there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I'm asking, is the council also canceling the celebration of the sidewalk? I assume the answer is yes, but.
Yes.
I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured y'all were right on the curve on that, so we're good. As you know, the committee researched all kinds of possible remote voting options. We provided the council with a draft resolution early this morning to authorize the election committee to conduct the election with electronic voting. And that's a big change for Martin's Additions. We'll talk more about the details of that in a minute. Let me just sort of list the other things that have changed before we get into the nitty gritty on the election. We want to move the election back 1 week from May 7th to May 14th, both to give us some extra time to check and double check and do test runs on the electronic voting system, and time to prepare the residents for this change, because they're going to need good information, they're going to have questions. And so anyway, the plan is to move the election back 1 week from May 7th to May 14th. And I'm assuming the council's okay with that? Yes?
No, we haven't discussed that as a council yet.
Okay, well, the election committee actually is the one who sets the date. But this is more than a courtesy. We obviously want your blessing. But I will tell you, we think it's important to move it back at least that much, if not further. Do you want to decide and discuss that now, or should I continue?
No,
Why
go
don't you just
ahead,
continue?
please.
Continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, so moving the election back 1 week to May 14th. If we do that, we can go to change number 4, which is moving the election. We can also move the candidate filing date back from March 23rd to Monday, March 30th. And that can be important because with all that's going on, only one candidate has actually filed so far. We have 2 other nominees who have not completed their paperwork or sent us any. And, you know, we think they are legitimate nominees, but they aren't actually on the ballot yet. And, you know, this is such an important, difficult time for our community that we hope that more people who want to help the neighborhood will step up and become candidates. Here we are, literally, you know, we're looking at March 23rd, right around the corner, and we only have one person actually on the ballot so far. So we would encourage residents who listen to this audio to please call or email the election committee. We've always counted on good neighbors here. That's what this village runs on, and the election committee will give you a packet of info to help you run for office. You can call us at 301-654-0176 or email us at vmaelections@gmail.com. Okay. Number 5, we may also reschedule. Can people hear me? I got a lot of noise on the background.
We can hear you.
You okay?
Yes.
We may also want to reschedule the Meet the Candidates Community Forum. It's now April 23rd. If we move the election to May 14th, which we would very strongly urge you to agree to let us do, we might want to move the Candidates Forum closer to the election. It's usually within 2 weeks of the election. So May 14th, as the election would mean that the community forum would be around May 1st. And we would obviously publicize that and put the date out. We will conduct it safely with people participating by Zoom and conference calls. And, you know, that information is part of our responsibility to get public information out to the community. So we'll be doing a lot of not just posting on Constant Contact, but also maybe flyering in the neighborhood and using everything we can to help people feel connected. And we would like to say right now to anyone who listens to the audio that if you have not been receiving the recent village postings from the election committee and the council, please call the office staff as soon as possible and give them your email address. The office phone number is 301-656-4112, we really would like to use the office facility here as a way of strengthening the infrastructure of communication in the village. There are a lot of people who are not on listserv, don't get the constant contact comments, and so we're asking neighbors to please talk to your neighbors and have them call the office and get their email address and their information up. So we'll be working on that as well. And again, the Community Engagement Committee was wonderful when we asked them a little while back to have the street captains help identify new neighbors who aren't listed in the directory and probably aren't on the village staff list yet, to just, call or email or let them know that they please should do that and help them do it.
Marty,
So-
do you mind if I give a little update on that front? Do you mind?
So that'd be great, and then I'll pick up when you're done.
Sure. So as far as the village official communication, Julia and Niles have done some work on constant contact recently, and we're actually down to, we believe, single digits, maybe up to 5% of folks who we don't have good emails for. They've identified those residences and are working to target phone calls to them in the coming days. So what we plan to do, or what they've suggested, and I think is a good suggestion, is refine those things and then use that so that we know there's at least one email, if not multiple emails, for each residence.
Tiffany, you're kind of going in and out. Maybe
Come closer.
Miles, if you can move away from the laptop and let Tiffany come
Get
closer.
close.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, can you hear better now, Lauren? Not better. Okay. So that but the email list that's in constant contact that we're using for all of the resident communications,
You're echoing.
can somebody mute? I'm hearing a lot of feedback here. Okay. So the email lists that we have in constant contact, we're down to about maybe 5%, single digits-ish, missing residences. So they've gone through and matched all of the emails to resident addresses in the village. And the plan is for them to spend some time over the coming days calling to fill in those gaps. And then there would need to be, a few direct emails to people saying, look, if you're receiving this email, we have you as an eligible voter in the Village of Martin's Additions. Would you please look around your house and confirm that anybody else who's an eligible voter has also received this email? If not, we already have a web form that people are using to submit information, their names, and that they're new, whether they're new residents or have recently become eligible to vote. We've already received some good response from the weekly wrap-ups that have gone out with new folks submitting their information. So we're getting more and more confident. I'll let Niles jump in if he wants to add anything about the data that we have, and that it is reaching, if we're reaching 95+% of residents, and if we have some residents who we know already will not provide us with an email, then offering those specific people an option that you guys may need to help us figure out what that is, the election committee. But I just wanted to let you know the constant contact and the reach of that, as well as the currency is not the right word, but having the emails that are actually reaching people is something that we're very aware of and they've been working on. So.
Right. So just to follow up on that, Julie and I have been looking at all the different data that we have, the other data sets that we have. We're obviously at the voter rolls as well. We're comparing, we're cross-checking all of it to make sure that the information is, one, accurate, and two, complete. So that process is ongoing, and I think we've made a lot of really good progress, even just in the time that I've been here, and knowing what Julia was doing before. This is one of the things that she's really done really well with. So so I do think that we're at a good place to complete this endeavor shortly and try to get that most accurate information.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Yes. Okay, number one, big thank yous. That is a big job. And once you get it back up to speed where it's up to date now, of course, it's a continuing job because people keep moving in.
Yep.
So thank you for staying on top of it. Thank you for getting it up to date, because it was really a worry to the election committee that we, simply didn't have accurate information. So thank you. This is a huge part of the job for the election committee, and we appreciate you working on it so diligently. Please continue. Let us know when you hit 100%. We'll bring you a cake. Okay. Let's talk now.
Marty, do you mind if I just jump in quickly before I forget?
Sure.
We have new residents on Raymond Street at the intersection with Melville in the southeast corner. They moved in today.
Yes, I met Ollie on my way here.
Okay, so now if you could reach out to them to get their information, it'll be awesome.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Marty, are you back?
Hang on one second. Sorry, I just had to write that down. Okay, there you go. Yep, now you're back.
Okay, I just said that's terrific. Talk about a speedy response. Meeting people on the first day and getting your information is terrific. I will not hold you to that high standard on everybody,
Thank you.
but I am grateful for it. We all are. Because it's going to be really important for the electronic voting. There are ways with the electronic voting to reach people who are not on our email voter list. But what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Lauren and let Lauren walk with you through the actual details of how electronic voting works. And we've done some research. Again, I have to just commend Lauren because she really did some wonderful work here, including, Lauren, can I brag a little bit? A wonderful test of the voting system that we ran yesterday within the election committee. And I have to tell you, Baby Yoda won. So it was terrific. Her kids, I think, Lauren, your kids helped design who were the candidates. But why don't you talk about this voting system here?
Is Baby Yoda the one who filed the complete application?
Yeah. I wish.
Okay, so I'm gonna unmute you. Hang on. There we go. It just switched on me. There we go.
My fault.
No, it's
My
all good.
fault. I meant to do that. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I just wanted to reiterate that the committee did in our meeting last night prefer to have an option where we are delaying the election into June. That was the strong and unanimous preference of the committee. So I recognize that there are some charter questions that need to be addressed around that in this state of emergency, but I did just want to underscore that is absolutely the first choice of this committee. If it is not possible for whatever reason for us to be able to delay that, obviously we will do our best to comply with the current, charter as it stands, and that would be when we pushed it to the May 14th, which is within our purview and right to do. I don't think we require any authority from the council around that, because if we had chosen May 14th from the start, it would have been May 14th because that's inside the charter. So I do just want to flag that. So I am heartened to hear that the voter rolls are in as good shape as they are, because I do think that could make it substantially easier for us to actually be able to pull this off by May 14th. And that's something that the committee will have to discuss, I think, separately. But I do want the council to take seriously our request that you look into what it would take to have an emergency action to, since, as we know, the state of Maryland has also delayed their elections and many states are delaying elections. We obviously want to make sure that as we're instituting a new set of procedures here, that we are doing it in a way that is maximally thoughtful, inclusive, that we're not sort of like phoning it in. We don't, as a committee, ever phone things in. And here we are kind of like, I guess, phoning it in some ways.
You're rubbing it in. You're rubbing it in.
Exactly. But I want, given the fact that, we hold ourselves to very high standards, and this village holds us to very high standards as well. I don't want us to fumble this electronic moment, and I do think that we want to make sure that we can really be thoughtful, and we have a volunteer committee of people who are working full time with children at home, and so we would appreciate the time to be able to do this well. So that being said, I do want to just do a quick, I'm going to share my screen, which should, for those of you, I think you might need to come closer to the screen if you're in the office, but, and those of you on the phone, I apologize. Let me just see if I can get this to work.
So at the bottom there should be a share. There we go.
I'm on it. Yep. So I've been zooming all week.
Good, good, good.
Oh, good.
So this is Election Buddy, which we did a test on yesterday. We through this are able to select very high standards of authentication. We feel comfortable with the levels and the standards that this site holds. They are the one site that we've looked at that has experience with government elections, which I think is important, again, because of the high standards. Now, the thing I really want to draw attention to is you can select, the emails are the sort of the easiest way to go. It's a sort of an individual key that gets sent, to people's emails. And so obviously having up-to-date emails is important. I think we would also want to go with this printed notices option. So you actually can select something that, now this is what the email would look like. This is basically what gets generated, and it's a test here, but this is what would get generated and sent to individual residences. And we can obviously customize this however we want, but this has it basically creates a QR code, a unique QR code that someone can scan with their phone to be linked to their house, to their residence, or going to this website and entering a unique key there as well. I think, I have a call scheduled with Election Buddy tomorrow to understand, what would happen if we sort of doubled down, like if somebody got, an email and then we also backed it up with what I think should probably be an individual key code per voter in the house. So it would be, multiple ones of these going to a house with more than one registered voter potentially, so that everybody gets an individualized one. But I would want to make sure that from the back end they were able to synchronize so that if someone selected it, via email, that's the same code that they would, that they can only do it once, obviously. And we should be able to have that squared away tomorrow when I talk to them. So, I mean, I do think that if, and again, the committee is going to have to talk this over more, but it does seem possible if we're able to do a fair amount of communication with the community around this, and if we feel comfortable that sending these out to individuals, we'll probably need to think about some kind of a paper option for people as well, for those people who aren't don't have a computer, don't have a smartphone. I think in the interest of making sure that we're being absolutely open to everyone, we're going to need to think through some kind of a mail-in option, I imagine. But again, that's all things that we're going to have to determine. And I just think we need to make sure that we have enough time to really get this right. I'll stop sharing here. That's all I have to say.
So Lauren, first of all, great work on that, and with Election Buddy, fabulous. So a couple questions. One is, certainly you have a pilot group to test it with, and committee members, council, a group that you can keep pinging, and we won't think any of the worse of this for being the test cases, number one. But the other thing I'd love to know, and Marty or those who've been on the committee longer term would like to know, is, I thought about this as I listened to Niles and Tiffany saying we're at the 94-95% threshold of households anyway with those. What's been the percentage of eligible voters to voting in the village? I mean, the regular way we've been doing it. I just would love to get a frame of reference on that for us.
Marty,
I think,
60%.
because Marty and I talked about this today, I think we're at about, and Marty, jump in if I'm wrong. I know that you're actually muted though, but I think it's like 65 or 70% of voters. We have, a pretty high voter turnout.
Can I jump in?
Yep, you're in.
Yeah, our record is over 400 voters. That was back in 2015 in a very hotly contested election. And that was more than 2/3, close to 73% of the eligible voters that we knew of at that time. We usually run between 260 and 300 voters, which is still pretty good. It's like, 60%. And again, the number of voters changes. If you have an older household with 3 teenagers in college, you might have 5 voters in that house, and then they move, and a young family moves in, and you only got 2 parents voting. So the number is not stable, but it's usually around 600, 675 in that range in terms of total eligible possible voters. And having 300 to 400 people vote is really pretty cool. And previously, before 2015, the voter turnout was very low. There'd be like 80 or 90 people who would vote. And so it really has gone up, and I that's one of the things I'm very proud of, that we have really seen
you should be.
participation.
I think we are going to see higher voter turnout with online platform. I think that's one of the things that they find pretty significantly.
I would agree with you. I've done that with my own groups when we used to do paper versus going electronic. Somehow it just opened up. It made it easier for people, or to actually do that. So I mean, this will be. I'd be curious, regardless of when. I think this will be a really good thing for us to have as in our quiver.
I agree, and I think that in fact, and I mentioned this to Tiffany when I ran into her at a safe distance on the street today. Maybe not quite safe enough, really. I mean, we were close, but is that I think this could possibly be something we move to in the future, even at the sidewalk party. Is that I think it would ease up the counting and the issues that we've had. I mean, it's always been fun counting ballots with all of you, but I also think this is going to be something that we can institute into the future as well, potentially. It's $89, so it's extremely cheap. And the other thing is, I do think if we're going to do a series of tests, that first test I got, 5 people, and it was free, and it was, just your sort of give it a spin and kick the wheels. But I think we would probably need to pay for larger tests, which again are going to be negligible.
So what I was going to ask
I think that the spending the money to test it out is well worthwhile. I mean, if the big one's 89, what's
Right.
it, I mean, come on, that's so worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I love the idea of the QR code, particularly if that helps us address, the puts and takes of when here's the other question I had. When you have when somebody says that they voted, are they being tracked by their ISP address, or are they being tracked by their email? Because the IP address might be the same household, the same system versus.
They're being tracked by the email. So, at least, I have to ask more questions. I haven't been able to talk to somebody yet about the QR code. I have a lot of questions about how they deal with the QR code, but they certainly tracked it by email. Yeah, it was, and then I would imagine, I mean, they're very like, was it belt and suspenders? I was impressed. They've just really thought of a lot of safety precautions. So I would have to imagine that they're thinking about that as well.
And again, we need time. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
No, you can hear.
Okay. This is one of the reasons that the committee really voted unanimously for more time. And May 14th is our fallback position. We really would like late June if possible, because we really want to make sure that we kick all the wheels on this and test it. And there are a lot of ways you can specialize this program. For example, you can allow for write-in votes. You can provide information on candidates. You can not just have the good, strict security provisions that are so near and dear to my heart, but also really solid voter privacy regulations and the whole thing. I mean, there's a lot of customizing we need to do here, and there's going to be a lot of work to do that. And we'll probably run several tests to make sure that every piece of it works. There's a lot of, when you get down the weeds, there's a lot of detail here. And
so let me ask you this: is there I'm talking out loud? I haven't had a chance to, obviously, we're all thinking out loud here. I mean, I don't have any problem with going to May 14th personally, you know, I mean, pushing the envelope to the latest date. But before, is there a time where we can start testing it out and the like, where we say, you know what, we're getting nowhere on these tests. Now we really need to extend it beyond there. Or we may say, hey, we're making progress on the tests. We don't need to go beyond May 14th rather than doing that now. I'm just trying to
That's an important question. That's exactly what we're thinking is, let's see what we can do in terms of, you know, configuring the system and running some tests and see where we are 3 weeks from now. And we'll get back to the council on that. We will keep you informed of our progress every step of the way. But it is going to take time, and we don't know. Right now, the answer is we don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know if the first and second tests will all go beautifully, or if we'll find a glitch and have to go back to the company and you know, work out a detail. It does seem to me, I think Lauren's right, that they have really, you know, this is not their first rodeo. So I think that it may be possible. I mean, a month from now, we could have an electronic system that we think is just, you know, whiz bang perfect. But a month from now is when we'll know. Not yet. We just don't know yet. And because we will customize it to do the kinds of things, like for example, rotating ballots to prevent positional bias in voting, is something that's, you know, really clear in the electoral research. And we've been doing that in Martin's Additions for 5 years, manually. And this company can assign the names on the ballot randomly. So we'd want to configure that feature into the program for Martin's Additions. There's a lot.
15 seconds. I mean, like,
10 seconds,
here's what,
that's fine.
my
Two more months.
thing with this is actually not about the tests. I have zero, I mean, I literally did this with 2 children on my lap who did it with me to set up, and like we ran it. It took us no time to set this thing up, and it was perfect. So I'm not concerned about the test. I'm concerned about, have we thought of all the gaps in our voter rolls? Have we thought about the people who, and like, what are our procedures going to be for getting, you know, the paper ballots from the person who doesn't have a computer? How do we, you know, in this climate, are we thinking about safety among all of these things? And to me, this is less about testing a professional system that makes their money out of doing this, and it's more about, have we spent enough time, and do we have the freedom to have, you know, email conversations with each other without the open, I mean, we have to talk about that, you know, and clarify that piece as well. Like, can we talk about these procedural things via
We're getting there,
Yeah.
Lauren. Sit tight, that's not coming up next.
And Lori, it looks like Lori wants to jump in if she
Yep.
be unmuted.
Mm-hmm. Hang on 1 second. There,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, some of the things that came up last night when we have done the absentee ballot procedure in the past, we've had to look at some details that you might not think about, like kids who turn 18 that are all of a sudden eligible to vote. We don't have an email for them. We ask for identification to verify their identity. There's also issues with online voting to make sure that we can verify the identity of all the people in the village. While we have emails for every household, we don't necessarily have emails that we can verify for every person. And, you know, those are some of the things. It's also going to take us a while to put together all the communications we're going to need to explain this, I think, to the community. And we want to make sure the instructions are crystal clear, because this is too important for us to mess up.
I think your points about making sure we've got a communication piece and we got the, I mean, that's really, that's key. I mean, when I'm glad you clarified, Lauren, that the testing, because I was thinking, God, it took us 3 hours to put a whole system throughout an association. But so let me ask you this. I'm just, again, I don't know enough, but are there instances where we can just say, we can tell the village tomorrow or whatever, say we're going to be putting in place an electronic voting. We'll be coming back to you with logistics and all that stuff. But right now, we want to make sure we have an email address for every eligible voter over the age of 18 in your household for our rules for verification. I mean,
You're going to laugh, Todd, because I drafted that at 5:30 this afternoon. So that's ready to roll.
I mean, that's that's something we could do right now, just to be, and that'll give us a little bit better sense of, is this gonna, are we gonna really be pulling teeth? Are we even close to where we've been in the past in terms of participation if we're not getting that? And that'll help us size up what's going on. So maybe, in 3 weeks we can say we need more time. We got to really dig in. And I would agree with you that if we're not getting any response, we have to take a serious look at that going beyond May 14th.
So are you suggesting, I mean, I think I like this idea, and that it would be a standalone piece of information, so not embedded in a long list. It is a standalone piece of information from through Constant Contact, maybe with something in the subject line that says like action necessary, and or important action needed. I mean, but I also think you can make it like, not only is this about making sure that we have clear communication channels for our election, but as we're entering this next period, it matters that we can contact everybody, right? I mean,
absolutely. But all we want to do is make sure that people know that we're not doing this to publicly give out their emails.
Right.
There are privacy concerns, and that's one of the questions that Lauren's going to.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, they're very clear about their.
But I think if we can just keep it to this, the very discreet. Here's what's going on. We don't have to worry about all the election details. We just need to be able to.
That's exactly what I drafted. Just this piece, because I agree it's the first piece to go out.
And so you said you have a web form right now where people can easily so you would obviously include a link to that,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had a good response, Lori, for the example you raised earlier. Like, somebody just turned 18, they're eligible to vote. We had 2 people submit last week. They turned 18, they're now eligible to vote, and they even in the weekly wrap up, without a lot of publicity, they saw it, they submitted their information, and they're now added to our voter rolls. So I think, to your point, Lauren, direct email, calling for action, calling for a response. But the web form has been used by a vast demographic in the village already. And so I think that's a good positive, at least it was good feedback for us for what we created to start, as a start.
And again, the committee will be, informing the council of our progress. We'll be talking to each other. One of the things we have on our list here, and I'm jumping ahead on my list a little bit, it's something that Lauren alluded to, which is a question for Ron Bolt. Ron, are you there?
So let me unmute him so that he can answer. Okay, go ahead, Ron.
Okay.
I am here.
Ron, thank you. The election committee obviously is going to be discussing some pretty extensive group, we're going to have a lot of group email discussions about all the, mechanics of this electronic voting system. And because those emails, I think, will involve the technical administrative mechanics, not policy issues, I believe that those committee emails will, be legitimate discussions that don't run into the Open Meetings Act. We would appreciate it if you can confirm that, because we really do need the mechanism to be able to work on this together as a committee.
Sure. So under the Open Meetings Act, the election committee can have administrative discussions without triggering the Act's requirements with respect to openness, notice to the public, and minute-keeping requirements. Now, what is administrative discussion? Administration is limited to administering existing law and policy. So if the committee is administering the existing election laws and rules, then the Open Meetings Act doesn't apply. If we apply it to developing the e-voting procedures, I would say once the council approves e-voting, by resolution tonight, for example, the committee can then thereafter administer that resolution without triggering the act. I mean, there is somewhat of a fine line. If a quorum of the committee is emailing each other about something else that might require a change to the election rules, then the committee would be entering into an advisory function, which is subject to the act and needs to be open. So again, the rule of thumb is, if you're administering a rule that the council has already approved, then you don't need to apply the act. If you're thinking about changing something that does require further council approval, that would be an advisory function for which the act does apply.
Thank you, Ron. That's extremely helpful, and that's where I was thinking. And so it's really nice to have that confirmed. And again, both Lori and I on the election committee have been certified on the Open Meetings Act. So we're very conscious of this. And thank you for the clarification and the confirmation, because we need that blessing to go ahead and do this job. Now that brings me to the next piece.
So hang on, Marty.
Marty, hang on 1 second. Lori wanted to say something.
Okay.
Okay, hang on. You're good. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Ron, I've been reading that they're relaxing some of the Open Meetings Acts during these states of emergency. Does that have any impact on us at this time?
Well, so are you referring to the FAQs during COVID-19 that the Open Meetings Compliance Board has issued?
Right.
Yeah. So the big change there is in the past, the Open Meetings Compliance Board has said conference call meetings are disfavored and should be avoided. And Open Meetings Compliance Board Council has explained one of the reasons for that is, of course, it's difficult to conduct a meeting by conference call because sometimes you have people talking over one another, or maybe someone has a bad connection and can't hear everything. So it doesn't always result in good decision making and frank and full discussion. And also the public can't observe the council members and might not know, for example, whether a council member is in a room with someone who's coaching them. And that's the actual example from the Open Meetings Compliance Board. But with COVID-19, the Open Meetings Compliance Board has said, safety concerns require conference calling, and so it is a permissible means during this crisis. It's still, I think, best practice to do what the village is doing now, and if it can be done safely, have someone in the village office with a speakerphone for anyone in the village that may be disabled or not have a phone, or not be able to participate in the conference call. So that's one relaxation, but other than that, we still need to comply with the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you, Ron. That's really helpful. And Lori, that was a really important question. Thank you for remembering to ask it. All right, let's again move ahead here, because I know we're taking your time, but this is important. All right, is the council ready to vote to, we gave you some draft resolution language at 6 o'clock this morning. And I know that's short notice, but we didn't have the meeting till last night, so thank you for working with us as this develops. All right, is the council ready to actually give us that authorization to proceed with the electronic voting? Or do you have more questions?
I could talk to my other council members. We have a resolution that was informed by the governor's declaring of a state of emergency, which, since we're a municipality, it's helpful for us to be kind of flowing down from that.
Right.
That would allow for election rules and procedures this year. It would be temporarily amended, which also falls under our charter that we're able to do this. And it would be in play for 60 days. Now, for obvious reasons, this is not something the council has discussed, because we are complying with the Open Meetings Act. But we do have an amendment that the council members all have. And it is actually, if you haven't looked on the website, it's up on the website as well.
So my question is this something that we can resolve tonight? Because we'd like to get started on the electronic voting work.
Marty, without speaking for my colleagues right now, I believe the answer is yes, but we'd actually need to introduce the resolution and vote on it.
Okay, you want to hold that to the end of the discussion?
Yes, please.
All right, will do. Thank you. That again, the electronic voting is one of our recommendations. The other one is the one that Lauren emphasized as well.
Hey, Marty, hang on 1 second. Lori's got her hand raised.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Why is it not?
That's right, it's coming off.
There we go. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, I guess this is another question for Ron. I read, and I guess I circulated this among the election committee, that since Maryland is thinking about moving to a mail-in election, the election board went to the state attorney and was told that because of the state of emergency, election procedures wouldn't need any kind of legislative action. Does that not trickle down to our small municipality?
Is Ron?
Am I
Yep.
unmuted?
Yeah, no, you can speak.
Okay, so it's a complicated question.
Okay.
The governor's proclamation of emergency is based specifically on state law, the public safety article, Title 14, which gives the governor the express power to declare a state of emergency, and in doing so, to suspend statutory law, rules, and procedures. So the governor has the express authority in the state of emergency to waive the law. So that includes election law.
Okay.
It's debatable whether or not that same authority is shared with municipalities. There is a nice provision in that state law which says the legislative intent of that law is to give the same powers to local government, which I would rely upon if we ever wanted to attempt to do something similar. But then elsewhere in the law, it says, if a municipality declares a state of emergency, the effect of that declaration is to activate the local government emergency plan, which typically involves debris management and the like, and not really election laws.
Okay.
So
That's helpful, yeah.
Okay.
it's
Thank you, Ron.
I guess in a nutshell, it may be best to say we don't have the same express authority as the governor to suspend election rules, but we arguably have that authority. So, if we need to exercise that authority, we can probably make a very strong argument. If we can get the election done without having to amend or waive our election laws, that may be preferable because we can avoid the argument.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
That's very helpful, because, again, we had two recommendations. One was about postponing past the May 15th deadline if needed, and the other was about going to the electronic voting system. And it sounds like the council and Ron, that you're addressing both of those, so we thank you for that. Let me move on to some other follow-up items we have. One is the community information aspect of this, which we consider just as important as having the actual mechanism work right. We need to make sure people understand the mechanism and can ask questions. We need a lot of interaction with the community on that. So we're going to be posting the election info with updates every week. We're going to put a detailed article in the next issue of the village newsletter. And Niles, I have a question for you there. From my little calendar, March 27th is the newsletter date. Is that when we need to have our article in for the April newsletter?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We will do our darndest to make sure we do that.
Thank
It
you.
may be somewhat lengthy because there are a number of pieces we need to put in. We're not going to dump everything on it.
Right.
That would be more explanatory than the short piece we may put out tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So that'll be a longer article. We will also, of course, still do the official election info packet mailing. It would be nice if we had an extra week to put that together. Right now, that packet is scheduled to be assembled with all the candidate statements no later than March 24th and to be printed to the printer by March 25th to meet the May 7th election deadline. And again, we would really like at least May 14th on an interim basis, if not longer. So that is another aspect to this, that the election packet would have to go to the printer on March 25th, and we don't have it anywhere near ready. Again, because of the circumstances, everybody's concerned about the virus and taking care of their kids and all that. I think that we need to allow an extra week here to, allow candidates to get their paperwork in before we put the packet. Moving the election to the 14th gives us an extra week on preparing the packet, which may turn out to be, old-fashioned, but important, because it takes time to do that, to get that to the printer.
Okay.
So
Hey,
that,
Marty,
anyway.
Jesse's got his hand up. Can we check
Sure.
him in real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Sorry, just 1 second. Okay,
No problem.
go ahead.
Hey, Jesse.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks. I think the things that Marty has just been talking about, though, kind of, to me, raises the concern about, trying to hold this election even along the May 14th timeframe, which are the number of steps and, updates and all this stuff to make that happen. I know a lot of other people in this village are like in the throes of trying to organize our lives and watch our kids and telework and keep our families safe and make sure we have all the supplies on hand. I'm up to my eyeballs. So, I barely have time to deal with the election committee matters. And, an early decision to delay the election till July would really give us a lot of breathing room to take care of our families and take care of these pressing matters now and give us, ample time to deal with this. To put in all this work now and then to only postpone the election like much later, it's not really kind of addressing the main problem that a lot of us have, which is the need for time and mental space now at this critical moment. So that if I could just put in that pitch, I understand what Ron's saying, that it's not an easy argument, but like if there's ever time to push the envelope, it's now. I mean, Ohio governor just defied a judge order to delay the primary because he said it's an overriding issue of public health. And, so I feel like whenever, the dust settles, people are going to get a lot of slack for making decisions in the interests of public health in this unprecedented situation we're in, if there's any wiggle room under the law. So I'm not sure I speak for the whole election committee, but, that's my 2 cents, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very much the sense of the committee. We opened this discussion by talking about our concerns about how this is just a constantly evolving situation and the dangers are very real and more serious. I think Haley on our committee mentioned last night that it takes time for people even to mentally absorb just how serious this is and just how much it's changing our lives. And so I think that the May 14th deadline would in fact be pushing it, and I would encourage Ron and the council to look at late June or early July. I realize that the new council terms start July 1st, so maybe late June would be more workable. But, we might be able to do the 14th, May 14th, but I think it would be very wise to give us a longer time frame from the get-go and not change it midstream, which I think will be confusing to people. I mean, this is already a big change to go to electronic voting and not have the celebration on the sidewalk and all that. That's a cultural change for the village. And people are stressed out and overwhelmed, and let's see if we can do it clean. But again, we do need a decision tonight, if possible, about allowing us to proceed on the electronic work, because that needs to be done. Let me jump in here with a couple other things. An administrative note, we are in the process of updating the election information on the website. There's a lot to be done there, and with everything else that's been going on, that task is still a work in progress. We will very much appreciate the assistance of the staff to help us get that done, but it might be next week or the week after, depending on how things go here. So again, I thank Niles and Julia both for helping us update the website. It had gotten way out of date because it wasn't updated for about 10 months, and that was not the election committee's fault. Let me just leave it at that. We have one procedural reminder, and then we have a request. The procedural reminder: it is not okay for anybody in the council or staff, I'm reading this, to alter or delete the content of any public information from the election committee without the committee's permission. Interfering with public communications from the election committee is interference with the management of an election process and is prohibited by the charter. Providing community information is one of the election committee's official duties. Interfering with election officials in the performance of their official duties is prohibited by merit and election law. And that is just because this little incident that happened, but nothing that concerns us. But I just wanted to make sure we had on the record that when the election committee provides a document to be put on Constant Contact or on the weekly wrap-up or in the newsletter, that really it is not appropriate to have that edited without consulting the committee. So are there any questions about that procedural point? Okay. All right, let's go on. Request for neighborhood help. The note that we have drafted says that we need everyone's help to update the directory with emails for each eligible voter in your household. And it talks about people stepping up as neighbors and contacting their neighbors and calling their next door neighbor if they moved in the last couple of years or last week or whatever, or if they simply aren't on the site yet. To really check in with your neighbor and make sure that people are registered. We'd like to send a message that is community building here that says check in with your neighbor, not just for their well-being, but while you're on the phone with them, say, by the way, is your email up in the village office yet? And incorporate that in part of the thing that this meeting started with, which was Jeff's wonderful notion about the care and compassion team that he's building. And I think that we have an opportunity here to really use this terrible situation to build a much stronger, more cohesive community, to do some healing over some of the divisions in the past. And, I'm not trying to make, lemonade out of lemons here, but this really is an opportunity for building a stronger community and a more cohesive community where people really have an expectation of helpfulness and good faith with each other. And anyway, that's the tone we would like to take in handling this difficult election situation as an opportunity to have everybody involved. We want people to buy in to electronic voting, to making sure everybody can vote. And that has deeper repercussions beyond simply this election or the next election. And I'll close on that positive note. So we would ask the council to do two things: to very seriously consider moving the election to late June, and to please tonight adopt a resolution that enables us to start working on the electronic voting project. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Marty. So for my fellow council members, we have a resolution to temporarily amend the election rules and procedures. I'll read it just quickly. Whereas Maryland Code, Local Government Article, Section 5-202, as amended, grants to the legislative body of every incorporated municipality in Maryland, including the Village of Martin's Additions, general power to pass such ordinances not contrary to the Constitution of Maryland or public general law as they may deem necessary, in order to assure the good government of the municipality, to protect and preserve the municipality's rights, properties, and privileges, to preserve peace and good order, to secure persons and property from danger and destruction, and to protect the health, comfort, and convenience of the citizens of the municipality. And whereas Section 2-101 of the Code of Ordinances of the Village of Martin's Additions establishes a village election committee to manage all village elections. And whereas pursuant to Village Charter Section 602, the election committee shall operate according to rules and procedures adopted by the council. And whereas on March 5th, 2020, in an effort to control and prevent the spread of COVID-19, a state of emergency and catastrophic health emergency was proclaimed by the governor within the entire state of Maryland, pursuant to Maryland Code, Public Safety Article Title 14, and the Maryland Constitution. Whereas on May 17, 2020, Governor declared that the state of emergency continues and ordered the primary election of 2018, April 28, 2020, be postponed till June 2nd, 2020, and that the State Board of Elections prepare a comprehensive plan for the conduct of the primary election to implement measures to reasonably assure, among other things, that the public health, welfare, and safety not be endangered by the election, and that the security and integrity of the election be maintained in the casting of ballots. And, almost done, whereas the Village Council finds the temporary amendment of the village election rules and procedures to allow for online or electronic voting would help control and prevent the spread of COVID-19, assure the good government of the village, protect and preserve the village's rights, property, and privileges, preserve peace and good order, secure persons and property from danger and destruction, and protect the health, comfort, and convenience of the citizens of the village. And whereas this resolution was considered an open session right now, March 19, 2020, resolved that the election rules and procedures be and are hereby temporarily amended by the Village Council to allow for the 2020 election to be conducted online or by electronic means, using such election service provider as the election committee shall deem appropriate, and provided that the integrity of the election is maintained in the casting of ballots, is further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon adoption and shall be filed by the village manager and kept available for public inspection. And resolved that written notice of the adoption of the foregoing resolution shall be provided to village residents in accordance with section 502D of the village charter. And is further resolved that the foregoing resolution shall be permanently filed by the secretary and kept available for public inspection. Is further resolved that this resolution shall expire at the end of 60 days from its effective date per the charter, the village charter, section 502A. So for those who weren't able to read it online, I read through the whole thing. Do I have a motion from the council members or a council member to introduce resolution number 2020-3-1?
I shall move to introduce resolution number 2020-3-1, Arthur Alexander.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thanks,
Oh,
Susan.
hi, Susan.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Todd's nodding, so we're gonna go with Todd's aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Anyone opposed? Okay, so the resolution is adopted on an emergency basis. Well, if you guys can see a copy, those of you who are logged in via web, you can see a copy of it. We'll make sure that you get, the election committee gets one for its records going tonight, okay? Katya, this is the one thing that we'll have to get an electronic signature from you on.
Okay.
Okay. The next thing in the agenda is the building administrator's report. Doug?
Doug Lomar, the building administrator. For 3506 Bradley Lane, they have submitted a building permit application. We've reviewed the application. We're waiting for the county to approve their permit before the village issues their permit. It's for demolition of the existing house and to rebuild a new house.
Okay.
At 7204 Chestnut. A stop work order was issued on Monday, March 19th. For the applicant needs to provide a certified wall check and also a copy of the right-of-way agreement for these posts in the front yard. Since I wrote my report, I believe they have submitted the right-of-way agreement, and I think it's gone over to Ron for review. And we're going, so the stop work order has been issued. We've notified the applicant and their team that they need to resolve the setback encroachment into the side yard for the addition at the rear of the building. The survey that they provided shows that the addition that has been completed is 3 inches encroaching into the building setback, including the variance that was granted back in January of 2019. We also have a new building permit submitted for 7200 Dellfield that's being reviewed now, and the county is also doing their review. 3412 Taylor Street, construction is continuing. They've applied for and received an extension of the building permit through February of 2021, and the applicant is planning to pour the concrete driveway apron beginning of next week. We've also sent a letter to the State Highway Administration regarding the ponding at Brookville Road and Cummings Lane and Quincy. We haven't heard back from them, and I placed a phone call into the State Highway Administration and haven't heard back. Do you want to give me an update on the GIS system while we're doing this? The GIS contract has been awarded. I sent an email to the contractor today. They're on a staggered schedule over at their office, so they're saying that they will have the information to us by the end of the month. They're still loading the information into their computer, and by the end of the month, we should have our computer updated. And that's all I have for the.
Good. Thank you for standing by.
We did take a couple of projects off of the building schedule. 3405 Cummings Lane has been removed, and I recommended that the village close the building permit for 3508 Shepherd Street. They've completed their work, and the county signed off on the permit.
Okay,
Thank you.
so now we gotta make sure that we send their bond back.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next thing in the agenda is the financial matters. One of the reasons we are here tonight is to get our budget process going. So Arthur,
Yep, I'll turn it right to you there.
Okay, yeah, one of the reasons we had to have a meeting tonight was to approve the budget, which is required in the village charter. We cannot spend any money without having a budget approval. I want to focus on one main item. When I first started drafting this several weeks ago, I put in some standard language that I've been using for the last few months, that recessions often occur, although they were unpredictable and I didn't see any in the future. By the time I finished the draft, we are in the middle of one. And the implication for the village is that our main source of revenues, which comes from the state income tax, follows the stock market with about a 10 to 12 month lag. If anyone wants to see my spreadsheets on this and charts, just ask me, but I've plotted out our monthly revenues against the stock market since 2006. And there is this roughly 9 to 12 month lag in our revenues. So I expect that towards the end of the next fiscal year, we will begin to see a decline in our revenues from what we are expecting right now. But it will appear towards the end of the fiscal year. So it should not really affect us very much until then. But over that period, we have set aside $1 million as requested or suggested by our auditors for just this kind of a situation. So we have money set aside that covers about 1.25 to 1.5 times our annual expenditure, so we're covered there. If the decline goes into next year, the next fiscal year, we have to consider raising our property tax, which is now at a very, very low level, 0.005 per hundred assessed value, which means that on $1 million house, you pay $50 in village property taxes. It's the lowest in the state. And we've kept it on the books at a very low level for the possibility of a future time when we may have to raise it. We don't have to raise it this year. This year our property taxes are on hold, same levels for across all our taxes that we had last year, but there's something in the future. So for the moment, our revenues look good. Our expenditures are falling from the current year. A number of projects that we had initiated should be coming to a close, although some of them are delayed because of the virus impact. They may fall into the following year, but right now we're thinking that most of our expenditures next year will be reduced compared to this year. So everything looks healthy. We're expecting right now a surplus at the end of the year of about $65,000. We'll have to see how our revenues hold up over the course of the next 12 months. We should not start getting a decline until the actual April 15th next year forms come in. What we'll be working on are the estimated returns that people have already filled out or have already established. So the capital losses that come out that are the main effect will not start to become apparent until people file their income taxes next year. So until next April and actually next May, we're in pretty good shape, and the fiscal year ends in the end of June. So I think we're in good shape to the end of the fiscal year. Any questions?
thank you, Arthur. So again, this is all in the packet that's online for folks who are following along. So we have two orders of business. One is the ordinance introduce the ordinance to adopt a budget for fiscal year 2021, which is July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. And then the second matter of business is the resolution to approve.
I'm sorry, I can't hear Tiffany.
Wait, Tiffany, come over to the,
So there's two pieces of this as far as the budget and tax. One is the first is to introduce an ordinance to adopt a budget for fiscal year 2021, which is July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. Is there a motion to introduce that?
I move to introduce.
Okay, it's ordinance 2020-3-2. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
I over here.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. And then the next is the resolution to approve levying a tax on certain real and personal property under the provisions of section 6-203 of the tax property article of the annotated code of Maryland as amended. It's resolution 2020-3-1.
As I mentioned, the taxes remain the same as they have been in the current fiscal year.
Because the emergency resolution, this would be resolution 2. It'd be dash.
So Ron, do I need to change that to 2020
Oh, that's right. We already have
3-2 or 3-3?
Yes. Yes.
Ron, can he talk?
Ron, yeah, you're on. So
Yeah. 3-1 was preempted.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
I assigned just change those to number 2 and 3.
okay, so the budget,
Tax rate.
is 3-2.
2.
The tax rate is 2020-3-3.
Right.
So, is there a motion to introduce a resolution to approve it, the tax rate?
I move to introduce that resolution to approve the tax rate.
Thank you, Susan. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Todd. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay. All right, so we've now made it through the financial business on the agenda. So the next thing is just a general office report. Niles, we're gonna kind of share with Niles since he's been here for day 4, long day 4. And the council members have a couple other things they'll update folks on. So go ahead.
So I guess what I'll say is my sort of general update is I'm reviewing. I'm in review mode of all the various contracts and procedures that the village has. So we're in sort of full review mode. Obviously, you heard a little bit earlier, we're working on things for the election as Julia and I are doing, and making all of the sort of rounds. We've had a couple of things around the community with things like, staying top of the trash and the recycling and things like that. And we're trying to keep those relationships, building on the relationships already there and trying to see what we can do going forward. So I'd say that's the general overview, and then if there's specific things, we can go from there, okay?
Okay, all right, great. Todd, you put in some legwork on the cyber procedures review, the RFP that went out, so do you wanna go ahead and talk about that?
Sure. Yes, we received just over 20 interest from over 20 companies. Some of whom, well, let me just say this, that some of whom would have eaten up, at least one would have eaten up at least half of our budget if we had followed with it. I just had no idea. So that was kind of a surprise, along with some of the names of some of these companies that I have to say were definitely were effective in terms of wreaking fear and terror in the minds of those who would read that. But we took a look at the 3 or 4 of the least expensive proposals all of whom were actually sized really to what was on our table. We read through all of them, but we invited 3 to present. We really liked the one right in the middle. That was somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000. The cheapest one was probably closer to 4. They were in New York and wanted to do everything remotely. And there was a more expensive one that was in the 12K, 13K range. That didn't quite do it for us. So the one we're recommending that we move forward with is in the 6+ range. They're out of Fairfax, and they can do the work in the time frame we need. And we will come away with a good review of how we're set up, where our weaknesses are, and what we can do to eliminate those weaknesses. You're never going to be able to eliminate any kind of threat, every threat imaginable, but I think this really review will help us get on more solid grounding than we are.
Okay. Thank you, Todd. So Niles and Ron, if you guys will work on getting that contract in place. Fortunately, some of it can be done remotely, for you and what needs to be done here in the office.
Yep.
For you.
Of course, that will be taken care of shortly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Susan, I don't know if you have an update you want to share. We got some good news, I think, from the state on the archiving.
Yes, I think it's ready to go, with the exception of the rolled plans. Those will take a bit more preparation, but it looks like the archiving will be completed soon. The boxes will be out.
Yes, and the plans are in the office. I don't know if you saw them when Doug was giving his report, the ones from the storage unit, and it's manageable. It's manageable. So
good.
Great. Anything else, Susan?
No.
Okay. Katja, is there anything you want to share just from as things have been transitioning in the office?
Nothing additional from me.
Okay, great. So then the next thing on the agenda, Susan, is the discussion of possible environmental committee.
So today is the first day of spring, and when we were compiling possible agenda items about 2 weeks ago, it seemed like it would be an appropriate time to discuss creation of an environmental committee. Sort of current events have overtaken the pressing need to create such a committee, but we have received a lot of very positive feedback from residents with regard to the composting project. And I just would like to start gauging resident interest in creating a committee to find ways that the village can be more environmentally responsible.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susan. I think it's something we keep, on the agendas and radar for going forward, and hopefully we'll sooner rather than later be in a place to have people get together and work on it.
We hope so.
Yeah. Thank you. So now we are back to the opportunity for the council to hear resident comments.
Are we going to discuss the election dates?
We need some legal counsel.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I don't know if any residents are raising their hands. Niles is looking to see.
I'm looking to see. Okay. It doesn't look like anybody has. If anybody wants to raise their hand, I'll again, for the person on the phone, unmute for a second, just in case you have anything to add. But if anybody else is good, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to see. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do right now. All right. Marty, are you have something to say?
Yes, I am raising my hand. Thank
Perfect.
you. Thank you. And I love the idea of an environmental committee. And Arthur, I think your budget work has been terrific. And Todd, I am thrilled that we are doing the cybersecurity check. Thank you on all counts. I have a question going back to the election stuff. I appreciate the resolution very much. The entire committee says thank you. And lets us now get into gear and get this done. And as you know, there's lots of components to it. Here's my question. The resolution that you adopted is terrific. but it's only good for 60 days. That's through May 19th. What happens on May 20th if the election is June 20th?
So that's part of our discussion with our council. Under the charter, the emergency ordinances can only be adopted for 60 days. So we will be having a discussion with Ron after this meeting.
Is it something that we would need to have the council adopt an amended election ordinance that the committee should begin drafting an electronic voting ordinance for you to consider?
Let us get our council and follow up with you after this meeting, if that's okay.
Okay, let us know as soon as possible because we have a lot of other work to do
Yes,
as well.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We are, in fact, I think Lauren said, very interested in perhaps going to electronic voting permanently, in the
Yes,
future.
yes.
This is not the ideal time to test it and start it, but here we are. And if it works, there's no reason not to continue it.
Yes. All right, thank you, Marty. Anything else?
That's it for me. Oh, yes, one thing. We will email Niles a written election committee report tomorrow if we can, because I know you'd like to attach those to the minutes.
Yes.
Yep,
Please do.
Okay, it might be Saturday.
that's fine
That's
as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Any
Good night.
other resident comments as we close?
Yeah. Unmute the call as well. If you don't have anything to say no. If not, you have the floor for 301-654-0123.
Good evening, everyone. This is Keith, the weatherman.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Dan.
I want everybody to enjoy the first full day of spring tomorrow, the earliest that it's ever occurred since the 18th century. But it's going to feel more like the first day of summer because we'll be 85 degrees tomorrow.
Oh, no.
So everyone enjoy, and Todd, thank you for those kind words earlier in the meeting. The best to everyone.
Yes, thanks, Keith.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It occurs to me as we're checking with residents that since not all of the council's here, are there any other closing council member?
No?
All right, so the council now will entertain a motion in open session to enter into closed session in accordance with section 3-305B of the Open Meetings Act. We're gonna receive some legal counsel on several matters.
Okay.
Does anybody make that?
I will so move that we move into closed session from open session.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Susan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
No one's opposed?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Be safe.